a good team with those two on board.
Yeah, but it's not uncommon for guys to get passed up, obviously, because every team has a certain need that they're looking for. So if you're telling me that he was passed up in the second round by X amount of teams, it's one thing. Just because you're passed over by a handful of teams or whatever the case may have been with the guy, it's not that big a deal. It really is. That's how the draft dynamics work.
I don't know how the specifics of how it went, but I mean, to think, like, I'm sure those two teams who passed on will kind of wish they had him, and I don't know who those two teams were.
Right. I mean, so therefore, you probably might want to understand that when you're talking about talent evaluation, okay, and general managers find that they have a need here, it isn't because they, downgraded the player. Some of the best players ever were passed up by somebody. Case in point, okay? You've got Michael Jordan slipping to third, and to Chicago. But you have guys there, you have centers that they thought were franchise changers. Does that, obviously it didn't work out.
Yeah.
It didn't, but there's a reason why guys get passed up, and then everybody's licking themselves in the chops. I have to admit, back in Detroit when you had Darko Milicic and Carmelo Anthony, well, that was career suicide for Joe Dumars, because once he left the Pistons, he never got hired again. So, but was part of that problem with Dumars attributed to, burning bridges with coaches, this and that. We don't know. That's something nobody will ever know. But the point is, when you make catastrophic personnel decisions, and I mean catastrophic, that set your franchise back for years, that's a different animal. It just is. It doesn't mean that one team is horrible and it just depends what you're looking for.
Yeah, and the landscape of the NBA, I guess, when Jordan was drafted prior to '84 was a lot different as far as player evaluation goes. Now, I mean, obviously we still laud centers in the NBA. That's why Porzingis going to Dallas and being healthy is something that we like, because when he was with the Knicks, when he was on the court, he was one of the more dynamic centers in the league, and especially given the fact we're talking about Doncic, who's a young guy. Porzingis came into the league at 22, so I mean he was a young guy who knew exactly what he was doing out of the gate. It's just injuries hurt him a little bit, no pun intended, and now he's healthy and he's
Yeah, but there's more to that situation too than you even understand. He had a toxic organization to work with. Phil Jackson was there 50% of the time. They were going through coaches. The Knicks' fortunes haven't changed. Only Porzingis did. He's in a much healthier situation where they're stable management-wise.
Yeah, he's got Mark Cuban in the ownership box.
Well, forget about Mark Cuban. You got Donnie Nelson, who has been with that organization a long time. You got Rick Carlisle. You have stable in the three key places. You have an owner that's willing to treat his players well, and then you have a general manager with Donnie Nelson, who, by the way, Don Nelson had a great career as a coach and been in there. And then you have Rick Carlisle, an outstanding basketball mind. So you have stability in the most important areas, okay, where the New York Knicks have been very dysfunctional for a long time.
Yeah.
So, injuries played a part in the whole thing, but that's just how it works out.
Yeah, I mean, and especially when you see a great player leave, you can always blame it on an organization's instability. And the Knicks have been the NBA's punching bag, this side of the Charlotte Bobcats for the last 5 or so years. So, it's a totally apt point to make regarding them. I mean, it's as an organization, you hate to see a player that you scouted and drafted leave, and then he goes on to have great success elsewhere. From a human perspective, you like it. You want the best for everyone, but as an organizational standpoint, you wish he was doing that for you guys. But you can't have your cake and eat it too with everybody, and that's just
there's no exact draft science.
Yeah, I know every team has a different means of talent evaluation, so it just varies. But yeah, look, I love seeing guys this young lighting it up the way that he is. Hopefully he does it for a prolonged period of time, and they get back to those winning ways. Obviously, they don't have Nowitzki there anymore. He was a veteran presence, but after a while, his skills deteriorated, and he retired when he needed to. But look, if you can get a guy in like that, that's just a lethal 1-2 punch over there in Dallas.
Again, you have a great coach who will keep it all together. And Rick Carlisle has been known to exile players if he felt that they didn't fit in there and they went against the program. Excuse me. When you have guys that are going against the program as they are, you're going to be run out of town. I don't care what sport you're in. Maybe baseball, but I don't see many real bad characters in that sport compared to the NBA or the NFL.
Yeah, it's different. I think because of I think coverage is one thing, so you don't really see it as much. But the NBA allows for it more. I think obviously major networks like ESPN and focus primarily on the NFL and the NBA. So, the character and the perception of those characters that we see are developed more because of their added exposure on those networks. I think the networks play a major part in that. And whether you agree or not, it's one thing, but it's just my opinion because their bias tends to shift towards those two particular sports. As a baseball fan, do I like it? No, but at the same time, it is what it is, and that's what gets them ratings, and it forms our perceptions of how we view these players,
right? Well,
good or bad.
Personalities being what they are, it all comes down to performance. I don't care what league you're in.
So, look, I can't really complain about the guy. I want nothing for the best for that Mavericks organization, so I'm fascinated to see if he can keep this up all season. In fact, there's only 12 players, 20 or younger, that average 20 points an entire season. So if he can do that, you're going to put yourself in some serious MVP discussion, and you're going to become one of the new faces of the NBA in due time. I just think that's a matter of fact. Should his play continue? I mean, you could say small sample size because of how the season is still in somewhat of an embryonic stage, but as it develops, I think this guy's just going to continue to get better. If you're that young and you already have that advanced of an approach, this guy is shooting 61%. True shooting percentage. That's everything combined together. You don't see that when Ray Allen was at his best. Shooting threes for Boston and Miami, he was shooting 50% of the time from three, and just overall, that's to be that advanced at such a young age is something that you can only marvel at. I don't really know what else you really have to say about that other than that it's astonishing. I guess it's the adjective you can use to describe it. There really isn't anything else you could say.
Right. So. No, I get it. The reality is when you talk about players and how they fit in, you know what I mean? It becomes a different situation.
Yeah. Look, if you want to the biggest example of that is obviously Belichick, but we're not talking football, so it's not appropriate.
No, but we'll be calling college hoops, and we have Tom Shanahan on the program. Tom, thanks for being on Sports Exchange.
Yeah, sorry. I got sidetracked and forgot.
That's okay. That's why we send out reminders from time to time. Okay, so anyways, we'll make the most of what we have. Short, abbreviated version, but that's all right. So you want to talk about some college hoops? Go for it.
Well, like I told you last week, we're going to have a new number one. That's assuming that Duke was going to beat Georgia State.
Right.
And that game turned out to be tougher than expected. Georgia State, of course, has been in the NCAA tournament in the past, but as expected, Duke climbed to number one. Michigan State was the preseason number one. They lost Kentucky in the Champions Classic, and then Kentucky got voted number one and turned around and lost to Evansville. So I think we'll see a revolving door number one teams this year. There's nobody that has dominant NBA talent, besides maybe one player. There aren't a lot of lottery picks out there grouped at Duke or Kentucky. And I think there's more balance just throughout the league. Duke is probably going to lose somewhere. Louisville has the potential of beating Duke. Virginia, of course, North Carolina. So those teams aren't going to go undefeated. Then you look at the Big Ten, Michigan State. Maryland is a very good team. They're ranked number 6 right now.
Right.
And Ohio State has proven to be better than people thought. They're at number 10.
Right.
In the Big 12, Kansas is number 4, but Texas Tech is coming off their runner-up finish in the NCAA last year. They're number 12.
Right.
So you just can't expect teams to go undefeated. And the number one team will have several losses by the time the NCAA tournament comes around.
Yeah, well, different discussions, won't we? As the number one rating terms, I don't know whether you used to watch soap operas before, but I remember As the World Turns, although I wasn't big on the soap opera side, but boy, as the rankings turn, well, you never know when you're in college whether you have to rely on them to fill in classes, but that'll be for another conversation. So, all right, well, now that we have your overall view about Duke and all these number ones dropping by the wayside and the fact that there is no dominant team, give me a little more information about that, then we'll talk about Michigan State and Cassius Winston.
Well, like I was saying, a team that was really impressive was Seton Hall.
Right.
They're ranked number 13. Michigan State really had to play to beat them last week on the road at Seton Hall. So that's a big X team. Let's see, they're the highest-ranked Big East team at number 13. I mentioned Texas Tech is number 12, so they're Kansas's competition. Pac-12, we got Oregon at number 11, and then of course Gonzaga is always out there also. They're number 8.
Okay. So tell me about the job with Mark Few. Here's a guy that probably could have had every great job on the planet, but as a result, he continues to stay out with Gonzaga.
Yeah, he knew he had something good out there. I guess he's turned down the job enough times, and now he's gotten a little bit older that you don't hear his name mentioned like it used to be. And he might have saw what happened to his predecessors. What was his name? The former Gonzaga coach. He had after they got Gonzaga to the NCAA tournament, had some success. He went to Minnesota. Was fired 2 or 3 years later, and then he ends up back at Long Beach State. And Mark Few probably saw that happen at Gonzaga and at other schools where coaches went chasing greener grass and ended up detouring their career and realizing that everything he can have just as much success at Gonzaga as any place else without taking on the pressure that comes with a Kentucky job or another place like that.
Well, hey, it's okay to be a big fish in a small pond, obviously, as the old narrative goes, right? And he's done real well there.
He has his pipeline going. He gets so many European players.
Right.
I don't know exactly how he's tapped into Europe so much, but he keeps getting them and getting them to come out to Spokane. So that's out in the middle of the northeast Washington. There's not much out there, but I guess some guys like it for that.
Okay, while you have a few minutes, I'll let you talk about Michigan State's Cassius Winston. I know that was very important to you. We spoke earlier.
Yeah, everybody's heard by now that Cassius Winston, his brother, committed suicide. He jumped in front of a train at Albion College, which is a small private school about halfway between Detroit and East Lansing. And Cassius actually had 2 brothers playing for Albion College. The one that killed himself was named Zachary, and his nickname was Smoothie. And he was actually very close to a lot. He was actually very close to a lot of the Michigan State players since he spent time up in East Lansing a lot with Cassius. So a lot of the players knew him, and they took it hard too. But this is one of the values of having a coach like Tom Izzo. Of course, there's no handbook on how to handle a player losing a brother to a suicide like that. But because he's been at the school so long and experienced so much, and the players trust him so much, he's been able to help Cassius through a tough time. The fans have been supportive as well. And a good example of that is Cassius Winston's 2 brothers both played at Albion College, like I said. So the other day, when Albion College had a home game, Coach Izzo gave Cassius a day off. I think it was on a Sunday, and gave him the day off and said, "Go down and watch your brother play and support him." And so he missed practice that day. So they're kind of balanced in helping him recover from a tragedy and still playing out his senior year, which obviously is very important to him too.
So how do you think Michigan State rallies the whole year, knowing that you've got a guy that they bond together? There's like a brotherhood there, isn't there?
Yeah, he's gotten a lot of support from all his teammates, and I think in the long run it helps that his teammates knew his brother real well and liked him, because it's not just a distant story about a family member dying. They can all relate to how close Cassius and his brothers were, because they saw him interact a lot over the years. Cassius is a senior, so that's a long time, and Zachary would have been coming up there to East Lansing since his high school days.
So, any other observations about ACC hoops that we should be aware of?
Well, don't sleep on Virginia. I think where are they ranked right now? Number 7. People kind of dismissed them because they had 3 players go pro. But